You're listening to the Curious Equestrian podcast. Produced by Horsemanship Journal, we unfold diverse stories of horses and their people. Stories that inspire, that challenge and transform us. Where curiosity leads the way, and every horse has a tale to tell, enriched by a variety of human experiences and insights. This is the Curious Equestrian.
I'm Kate Wensley, and today I'll be speaking with Dave Stuart. David has over 35 years of experience from starting young horses and dealing with horses with behavioural issues to teaching people the foundations of horsemanship. With a huge amount of experience, I'm looking forward to speaking to Dave today about all things horses and life. Hi Dave, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Well, thanks, Kate. Very well. Lovely to catch up in a virtual way, I guess, if that's the way of putting it.
So, Dave, I'll start off by asking, how did you become involved with working with horses?
Growing up on my family's cattle property, horses were what we used then for cattle work. And I guess I always wanted just to get better with horses. I didn't start out doing what I've done now for a long period of time. I just wanted to get better with horses. So I guess I started out when my grandmother, she would first lead me down the road on a bridle rein there on an old grey pony. And I guess at that stage I was probably only 4 or 5 or something like that. And, now that it's quite a few years since those days, here I am, so to speak.
And so what drew you to wanting to help people with their horses or help the horses with their people?
I think, to be truthful, I just fell through a series of open doors. It was never something that was planned.
Okay.
I just, as I said, I really just wanted to get better with horses and to allow me to be able to do my job. I didn't enjoy fighting with them or any of that aspect of it. And as I said, I just wanted to learn how to get along with them and be able to have them to be better for me and be able to, again, do my job. And then it just so happened that back in the, I think, late 80s, I had an opportunity to go to one of Ray Hunt's clinics. And at that point, I'd never seen anybody ride a horse like Ray could. And then, I guess that certainly planted a seed. And then I had the opportunity to go to the US where I was riding cutting horses quite a few years later there. And through that time there, then I ran into Pat Pirelli over there. And, and at that point in time, even though that was only the early 90s, he was just starting to talk about instructor programs and things of that nature. And from there, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And, as an individual growing up, I was never one to be in front of the audience. I was always the one that is in the corner. And now I seem to be more in front of an audience than in the corner there. But that's, I guess, how it sort of started for me. And then things, it's from those early days it grew to where you start off in Australia, just teaching to where now you had the opportunity to travel on a much larger scale. So it's been surreal, I guess, in a lot of ways to over the last 4 to 5 years now to have sort of been back home where I run my family's cattle property now, and then to sort of catching up with folks that I haven't seen for long periods of time and hear how life's gone for them and swapping stories of one nature or another. So it's been quite a road trip, I think, in many ways.
So you mentioned Ray. I mean, obviously Ray is kind of the godfather of what is now modernly called horsemanship. But what is horsemanship to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what do you think it is when you start out, and with time and experience, what you now believe it to be is different. I think when I first started out, I just wanted it to be more of something that would allow me to be able to get horses started, to get them to where they could, in this case, work cattle and things like that. And to me, it's much more than that now. Like Ray would often talk about, being in harmony with the horse and being one with the horse. And they're probably words that I think that get banded around a lot in different ways, shapes and forms. But I think the more horses you get to ride, when you do feel those horses start to melt underneath you in a nice way, and they really start to get with you, or you get with them, Ray would talk about doing things slow to be slow and right rather than be fast and wrong. And I guess in those early days, you were more fast and wrong than slow and right. But so learning how to slow down was probably one of the biggest challenges I think I probably experienced in my youth, particularly. But now I find that as a result of my experience, I'm able to probably get along with a lot more horses now than what I could, 20 or 30 years ago. That's for sure.
And, obviously with the horses come their owners and stewards and riders. How much of a journey has that been as well, sort of teaching them to be at one with the horse? Because obviously, in practical terms, like you say, there are a lot of horses that have a practical job to do as well as a lot of leisure horses. So where's the happy medium, trying to prepare and equip the human enough to be able to start that conversation with their horse, if nothing else?
Yeah, again, another good question, Kate. And I'm not sure there's a 10 words or less answer to that sort of question. I think, every horse is different and every person is different there. And just trying to find some common ground where you can at least start a conversation based on where the horse is at and where the human is at. And some people have a lot more experience with horses, and so the conversation perhaps flows a lot easier, and maybe things move a lot quicker. And for others, you maybe have to slow that conversation down quite a bit for different reasons. And often, I start people off on the ground, and if they can get along with the horse on the ground, then you can move them into the saddle. And then again, just keeping it slow. First I used to think I had to get them doing, moving around a lot more on that side of it. I find I don't need to do that as much these days. You can get people walking and trotting around there, and they're all getting along well together, as in this case, the horse and the rider. Then, if you can kind of almost set it up to where they can feel some of those things, then what they do when they go home, you don't have a lot of control over. Maybe you can at least plant a seed that with time it'll get watered in one way or another, that maybe it'll grow into something.
Yeah, definitely. Because I imagine, fear is a big motivator in a lot of riders. There's the desire to do X, Y, Z, and then there's the fear that becomes the physical brace when we end up on our horses. I imagine when you're dealing with fear, both in the horse and the rider, I imagine that can be quite tricky.
Yes, it is. And I think generally speaking, if you've got, for a lot of people, if they've got fear both within themselves, and then they've got a horse that's also where the self-preservation on the surface there, you're generally going to keep those folks on the ground for obvious reasons there. As people get to where they've got more competency, then you can get them up in the saddle there. In some cases, almost getting them just to sit there and just see if they can be a friend to the horse there up in the saddle there. They don't have to get to where they're moving around a lot, but just get them to where they're a friend. And once that horse starts to find that maybe the human is not as threatening up in the saddle as what they first thought, maybe then you can again start a conversation or expand on the conversation there. But it is a challenging situation for many on the human side, is that the fear aspect does get in the way there. But I think as people get more competency, that then breeds more confidence. I think as a generalization, a lot of people start with horses in their younger years, or as kids or teenagers, and then life gets in the way as they get older. Family commitments, professions, mortgages, etc., get in the way. Then they get back into horses at a later stage in life, perhaps without the bravado they had as a younger individual. And I think that's where trying to educate people, get them to where they're more competent, and then over time, then that breeds confidence. And it's not a false sense of confidence either at that stage, I believe. So,
yeah, I think that's it. We think we're invincible when we're younger, don't we? And we don't really have a sense of our mortality, or, as you said, the responsibilities of work and home and family.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it can be a real barrier, can't it? Sometimes, between, you know, it's an oxymoron. Life is short, but then you think, oh, I don't actually want to shorten my life that much. I mean, it's like I really want to do this, but I don't want to die. So yeah, because at the end of the day, horse riding, it's a dangerous endeavor, but it's one that's undertaken with a lot of passion and commitment and love. We're in it because we love the horses.
Yes.
But going back to education, obviously, as things have moved on and there's more information on the internet and there's more access remotely to great trainers such as yourself, with online lessons and that kind of thing, and online clinics, particularly during the pandemic.
Yes.
How much of that is actually also has a negative twist? Whereas obviously where we had no option, obviously still having access to that support and that mentorship was vitally important. But also, is there also a danger when people go looking for stuff themselves on the internet that a little bit of knowledge is dangerous?
Yes, I think that can be true. And I still think that most people would be best to get along to a course in person. Obviously, that's not always possible for a variety of reasons. And so therefore, it used to be DVDs, and now I guess the internet is replacing DVDs in many ways. In fact, I can still remember the VHS tapes, the beta tapes. And
yeah, me too. I was going to say that, and then I thought I've just aged myself terribly, so keep quiet. But yeah, exactly. I remember it being on tape.
Yes. So the internet has replaced that aspect a lot there now, but I still think getting along to a course is probably in the best interest of most people there. And perhaps sometimes, the internet does lend itself to people having a false confidence, if that's a way of putting it. And then when you get out there and you have to actually deal with your horse, that's excuse me, is different again. So I think where people are able to get along to a course, and then if they then have access to, reputable DVDs or internet access to a reputable online coaching session, however that one works, then I think that's a way for people to progress there. And I think, people still need to get out there and actually do things with their horse. We get to where we can all become armchair critics of one nature or another and say, this is, I know I play a lot better game of sport now than probably what I did in my, when I played as much sport as I did. But when you get out there with your horse there, that's going to tell you what's working, what's not there. And it's not something, I think the horsemanship journey is not something that you accomplish in 6 months. It's a lifelong commitment where you're constantly trying to improve and better yourself. And, Ray used to talk about, he said, the horses, as soon as they're born, pretty much, they can run, they can walk, trot, canter, etc., stop, turn, do lead changes. And then we have the audacity to think that we're going to then teach them how to do it. It's only when we get on the horse's back or involved there that the horse seems to have a problem there. And, so I think, as I said, the horsemanship journey is, it's a lifelong trip. You've got to love what you do. And, and I generally do love being around horses, and I really genuinely loved helping people as well. I've just been up on a big cattle operation in the north of the country and helping their staff there and their young staff there, and some with more experience than others, and to see these folks then putting that into action, if that's a way of putting it, by going out there and doing a job, in this case working with cattle, and them having a smile on their face. In this case, they get to spend 10 hours a day in the saddle in some cases there. So it generally puts a smile on my face seeing that, but you've got to love you've got to love the horse to want to do this. It's not something where you just can pick it up and put it down for 6 months. You've got to get out there and have good times and bad times. And, hopefully in the bad times, you can pick yourself up and keep going forward tomorrow. And, maybe tomorrow's a better day. So.
Yeah, it's definitely not a linear journey, is it?
No.
It's a ride. It's literally a ride.
Absolutely.
It's a roller coaster. But but it's one that we love. Now, I have had the pleasure of owning a horse that you actually started.
Okay.
I sold him a couple of years ago, just because I needed a break for various reasons.
Mhm.
But he by far one of the best horses I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
So,
Nice.
but he was Archie, so he was grey, owned by Angela up in
Oh, okay.
Scotland. Um, I had a great nearly 5 years with him. How important is that foundation and that start for a horse, and to set them up for their life going forward?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And Ray used to talk about, the importance of a start in a horse's life there. And I think what's really, I guess it surprised me, but maybe it shouldn't have. But when you get them to where they started well, and I've had situations now where I've had some horse where it took a while to get things to where it was solid and dependable. But then if the horse was then turned away for 6 months or 12 months and wasn't ridden or anything of that nature, it surprised me how quick you could be up in the saddle, walk, trotting, loping or carrying around. And I think that all comes to, and without it being a dust storm either. So I think the start and that foundation is really important. I tell people in my courses, if they can make their goal to develop a nice riding horse, and your definition of what a nice riding horse with time will evolve. And for most, it's probably, a chip of it or a journey of 5 years or maybe even a little bit more, I guess, in some cases. But by the time you sort of get there, it's not that you're at the end of that time, you're going to be at the Olympics, but you'll have a horse that you go out to interact with, as in on the ground or in the saddle. And it's probably one that's going to put a smile on your face at the end of the day. And once you've experienced that, as opposed to where I think sometimes people go out there and they kind of go, what sort of a horse am I going to catch today? Or what sort of a horse am I going to, when you've got that horse where he's solid, then you know what horse you're going to get. And it's going to be this one that you had yesterday. I think it takes time to get that horse to where they're dependable.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely a joy. And he's gone on to do exactly the same that he did with me, and he's making another family really happy. And I
Great.
think having that start and consistency has really helped him. Now, interestingly, what about older horses that maybe have had a fair start and have been through life, but you still obviously want that relationship and that development with them? So, for example, I've now got 19-year-old quarter horse that I've had for nearly 2 years. And it's like with people, it's easy to assume with age comes knowledge and
Yeah.
experience and solidity. And that's not always the case. And I've definitely found where he was a reiner and he was a very good reiner in his day, there are definitely gaps in his education. It's a bit like old dogs, new tricks. Do you think it's still of value to continue your horsemanship journey, even if you've had an older horse come into your life?
I think so. I think so. I think in some cases where you'll see scenarios of, if I can relate it back to, problem solving with horses that maybe have some challenges of one nature or another, that the problem in some cases, if it's more to the extreme side of it, you might get it to where it's now more at a manageable situation.
Yeah.
But you might find that it still comes out, to some extent. But I think, you're better off to at least make a start. You'll be better off making a start than not making one. And in some cases, it takes, depending on the age of the horse, it might take a little time for them to start to come through for you. But I think, sometimes you'd be surprised at just what the horse has to offer there in this regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it just surprised me. I remember someone telling a story about Ray riding a horse. He was an old school horse, and sometimes those old school horses, they can get to where they shut down just for various reasons. And Ray just kept playing with this horse, and he didn't seem to do much. And then finally the horse started to come through and started to move his feet in the direction that he was being asked to. And Ray just smiled and he said, "There we go." He said, "We've made a change," and left it at that. And I think that's where, as I said, he's an old horse that was shut down, and you can get to where you probably do too much, but if you just keep setting it up, and that horse, after a period of time, might start to come through for you. So I really do think it's worth, you almost owe it to the horse to give it a shot. Every time you get on the horse, give it your best shot. Offer him the best you can. And I think if you can do that, and every time you get out there, just try and be the best you can for your horse, you'd be surprised how often then the horse starts to reciprocate.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that with my boy Teddy. He was very shut down, and actually it's taken a lot of time. But now his personality is really coming out. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I have a spicy quarter now, but no, it's lovely. So yeah, I think that that continual education is really important. Like you
Yes.
say, it's not a 6-month journey, regardless. It's for the lifetime of you, not only
Yes.
you, but also whatever horse is in your life too.
Yeah.
So you're heading back to the UK, Dave, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
So what can we expect when you're over here? I mean, I will share details of how to get in touch with your clinic organizer, so
Yes.
that if anyone's interested,
Thank
they
you.
can reach out to Tina. But what can we expect from your clinics? Because obviously you run a variety of clinics, and you're doing some cow work over here this time as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I believe so. So again, as I say, I'm really looking forward to coming to the UK. And when, with my clinics schedules these days, I don't really come in so much with a format of here's what's going to take place or anything like that. I've been out there now doing it for long enough, I guess, that I just look at what's presented on the day, and I just go with that.
See what turns up.
I'm sorry?
See what turns up.
Yes,
Present.
yes, absolutely. And I think, you can just help people so much more if you've got some flexibility within that, within your formats there to be able to do that. And I think it's nearly been 5 years since I've been to the UK. So I think the last time was in 2019. So there's a little bit more water going under the bridge there. And I've also ridden a lot more horses now. When we were obviously going through the pandemic, we were in lockdown, although probably not to this extent that we would have been if we were in London or anywhere like that. But, having just had to stay home, all I did was ride pretty much. So, I've got a lot more experience of it. When you're out there, a lot of times by yourself riding, it's kind of a solitude existence in a lot of ways. So you get a lot of thoughts running through your head, or if you offered this to the horse, or, if you said this would mean more to people by changing your presentation and that side of it. So I think in some ways, what are people going to get this time when they see me around? Probably an older version, I guess, probably one with more experience as well. So.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're coming back, and I can't believe it's been 5 years. It's just flown by in all the good and bad ways.
Absolutely.
So going off the subject of horses slightly, or it may not be depending on your answer, what was the last book you read or podcast, or the last piece of information that really influenced or made an impact on you?
Actually, my wife Rachel has just been reading Kinship with All Life, and it's one of those books that you've probably got to be in the right place to read it. And it was one of the books that Ray used to recommend people read. And with some of the horses that I've had come through over the last few years, I mean, some of them literally would jump out of the round pen if you did too much, and it didn't take that much for them to want to, they're very flighty, their self-preservation was right on the surface. And, it didn't matter how well you could ride or couldn't ride. There was no way you were just going to get on there and just hang on. They would literally find a way to change that. When you got those horses to where they really started to come on side for you, at that point, then you could get up there and ride. And I think that's where, perhaps I'm paraphrasing now, but if you understand that, or if you've read that book, Kinship with All Life, that probably gives you some understanding of why you can get onto those horses at that point in time, and maybe why you couldn't get on those horses beforehand. And, everyone talks about building a relationship and rapport with the horse, but maybe kinship with all life gives you an understanding of how to maybe go about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And also, it's having that self awareness, isn't it, about how you interact with everything around you and
Absolutely.
without becoming too hippie about it. But it's an important aspect, of horsemanship and our development as horsemen.
Absolutely. So I think self-awareness is one of the big aspects of the horsemanship road, that when you're walking down there, just being aware of the influence that you have over your horses. And it seems like sometimes that, you're doing so much, and yet as you gain more experience and your riding becomes more refined, it's amazing how little you can get to and get a response there. So I think that's something to kind of people to be aware of. And as I said, with the kinship with all life book, it's you've got to be in the right spot to be able to read it or understand it. But for those that have love animals and being around them, not just horses, it probably will touch a nerve there, or push a button for someone, I believe so.
Yeah, I bet. As you can see, I have my glamorous assistant behind me, my little cat. It's just come in, one of many in this zoo. No, that's amazing. So going back to your development yourself as a rider, Dave, and the stuff that you've been doing over the last 5 years, having that time to sort of grow and develop as a horseman yourself, what would you say? I mean, apart from more experience, the biggest change you've noticed within yourself? Talking about self-awareness, what have you seen has developed within yourself to make you the horseman you are now?
Probably my feel and timing has improved significantly over the last few years. It's again, just for the reasons I've just mentioned there. But I think my feel and timing has got a lot better. My awareness of the horse's balance has improved. I think when I heard Buck Brannaman speak about, that until the horse is in balance, they'll never be emotionally stable. I think, that was something that really struck a chord for me, because you often see people where they're trying to dole the horses out for different reasons. And there's some horses out there, I believe, that their self-preservation is so strong that they wouldn't take.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really cool. And going back briefly to feel, that's always an emotive subject in the fact that, do you think you can teach feel? Because obviously feel means a different word, it's a word that means a different thing depending on who you're speaking to. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Buck, he's obviously said that you can feel straight across the arena. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It's a proximity, the feeling, it's that energy. So with that in mind, do you think that there are aspects of feel in your clinics, etc., that you feel you can teach to your students, or at least make them more aware of? Yeah. 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 Yeah, it can be an elusive thing for some people. And I, I mean, I used to teach back in the day, a long time ago, and found that I wasn't a very good teacher. And it wasn't that I wasn't technically correct. It was that it's that, like that old adage, those that can't, always, I could do it and I could feel it, but I was no good at explaining it. And however much I wanted to make it better, I was good at training horses. I wasn't good at helping people. And it wasn't through a lack of trying. It's just that I found feel is such an elusive thing. And it's something that I intrinsically understood, but I couldn't communicate that. And I think any teacher that can even make someone else aware of it, it's pretty special, because I sure as hell couldn't. Just couldn't do it. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, especially it's like you say, you've got to try, and you have to experiment with it. And it comes back to what we were saying about the whole horsemanship journey being exactly that. It's a journey. Um, but I do think some people are worried about, getting it wrong or think they're going to break, something that's already been established in their horse or mess up their training, where actually when you hold back and don't try and you're not trying to implement or trying to set things up or experiment, that's when you could possibly, I use the word ruin, but you know what I mean? You could ruin a good horse because unless you actually try and experiment and try and develop not only yourself but your horse, you're never going to get any further than where you are. Yeah. Yeah, they're quite good at beating you in the middle, aren't they, and helping you out. I mean, my God, my ones help me out. Definitely. Definitely.